Hey guys, it's Rachel. Let me just I'm using a different camera today because my webcam's been playing up, so I'm really hoping that this is okay for you. I kind of look a bit blue, don't I? So this week it's Thursday and it's me and Cal, and this week we're looking at how to learn to accept your feelings, and there's been quite a bit of interesting stuff going on this week in terms of like understanding positive and negative feelings, and then something on Wednesday which touched on learning to fear feelings. You know, how did you learn that? And I think this again touches on something that I talked about last week, and I mentioned about Fran with regards to you know, how others in your early days responded to feelings, how they dealt with their feelings. So how did your mum or dad or your aunt or your grandpa or whoever it was who was around you, like, what was their response to your feelings? And not only was their response, you know, what was their response to your feelings, but how did they deal with their emotions? And I know for me that my family are pretty contained. So it's no surprise really that I kind of drifted into sort of an eating disorder. So this week I'm going to looking at a number of different things, and I'm going to read the notes that Felicia's given to me, and she's just said for this week, first, acknowledge that as a disordered eater you will most likely have a negative view of uncomfortable feelings. So that kind of makes a lot of sense, doesn't it? And I think what I want to mention in here as well is that it doesn't seem to matter for me at times what feelings I was having, whether they were positive or negative, but it became incredibly overwhelming. So if I was incredibly emotional and, you know, up and down, all over the place, kind of moody, kind of grouchy, that was one thing. But then if I went out and I was like, my mind was like stimulated, and like I felt happy because I got to see the babies, or like whatever it was that made me happy, I can kind of start to struggle with that intensity as well. So for me, in learning how to accept my feelings, I had to understand initially that regardless of feeling, whether that was joy, happiness, fear, loss, sadness, anger, that it was going to be uncomfortable for me because I wasn't used to feeling, you know. And all my efforts with my eating disorder were about trying to get away from that and get away from the difficulty, and like just wanting to numb myself from it. I didn't want to feel anything because anything felt too much. So that's kind of the first point I want to make, that, you know, in terms of accepting your feelings, you have to accept that, you know, an eating disorder kind of is a way of taking you away predominantly from negative feelings, but also I've touched on here just kind of those positive feelings that can feel incredibly intense. I could go out for dinner, which in itself was very difficult, but I couldn't deal with like positive emotions, and it just freaked my brain out. And you know, and I coped by, you know, purging or what have you. My predominant problem is anorexia, and that was kind of a way of containing. I felt like I was literally this big. I felt like I was just too much physically, emotionally, spiritually. Everything about me was too much. So what I want you to do is first, try to acknowledge that as an eating disorder, as you struggle with an eating disorder, or, you know, different mental health problems, feelings negative, you have a negative view of very difficult feelings such as anger or anxiety. And the second thing I want you to think about is about what you believe about emotions. So Felicia's just put here, belief is what you hold true about yourself and the world. So for me, anger, it was wrong. I was bad for feeling angry. I was selfish for feeling angry. I felt guilty for feeling angry. I felt too much for feeling angry. I felt like the worst person in the world if I was pissed off with somebody. It wasn't acceptable. So that was my belief about one emotion. It is unacceptable to be feeling this. I was a victim of abuse, and so the abuse would occur, and I would maybe have some negative thoughts and be like, you know, this isn't right, and this person's doing something to me that is bad. But then he would show up with a bunch of flowers. So it was kind of like, you know, I I can't have these negative feelings. And so at home, you know, it wasn't okay for me to be pissed off with my mum. It made me a really fucking bad person if I was angry with her. And that even goes to my therapy. And, you know, if I speak about my parents in my therapy. You know, my parents are good people and all the rest of it, but obviously there's been interactions throughout my life which have taken me to therapy. So, you know, if I said something, you know, about somebody upsetting me who was close to my family, my parents, and then I'd go home and it would be complete guilt. And I think that guilt is a really, really common emotion with people with eating disorders. I think it's something that we feel guilty for not being good enough, not getting the right grade. We feel guilty for making people worry about us. We feel guilty for eating. We feel guilty for purging. We feel guilty for not eating. We feel guilty for not recovering fast enough. We feel guilty for not being this, you know, this person that we expect ourselves to be. So when I'm asking you to try and identify what you believe about your emotions, these are the kind of examples that I'm thinking of. And what I want you to think about is something similar. What I kind of want to say as well is that by beginning to think about these things, you're really helping yourself through your recovery. And also that it is okay to feel. And it's okay to feel anger or anxiety or all the rest of it. It does not make you a bad person. And that guilt that you carry, that shame because of you, well, shame is carried because of your eating disorder. You're ashamed of your disorder. You're ashamed of the things that you do, the lies that you tell. And that kind of goes into recovery as well, because you just feel bad for not being good enough at recovery, and then you feel bad for not being a good anorexic or whatever the hell that means. And it just carries with you. So what I'm trying to say to you is try and understand what you believe about your emotions and let it go. You need to let it go, because you're not a bad person. Regardless of whether you're eating disordered, struggling with it, fighting with it, in recovery, it doesn't matter. You're not a bad person. This isn't about you with regards to that. You know, it's about your reactions to your environment. And you can't help that. As Bea said, you know, you can't help how you respond to something. So she talked about jealousy, and it was kind of like, oh, I feel so bad for feeling jealous. And just limit that kind of secondary emotion and just think, well, if I feel angry, I feel angry. I feel guilty, I feel guilty, but, you know, there's nothing else I can do. And then the third part is about asking you to make a conscious effort to change your beliefs. So that's what I just said to you before, isn't it? It's about looking at what you're feeling and what your belief is. So what is your belief about being angry? Well, you've got no right to be angry. You've got no right to be angry at this person. You know, you're the bad person for feeling angry. Well, just cut that shit out, you know? You're not a bad person. And I know I've said that like 15 times while I'm making this video, but I'm trying to just like put out to you that you're not a bad person for feeling. And even if you're feeling negative emotions, that's okay. And I think that's what you have to tell yourself when you're going through all of this. You have to say, okay, this person's pissed me off. That doesn't make me a bad person. That's okay. I feel pissed off. Okay? Or I feel jealous because of this. Well, that's okay. Doesn't make me a bad person to be feeling jealous. And, you know, something that Felicia's written again is that by accepting your emotions, no matter how painful they are, is really the key to overcoming dysfunctional eating or your eating disorder. And so, yeah, that's, you know, you have to say, right, if I'm going to recover, that means I'm going to feel, because you know what, I'm going to be facing my eating disorder front on, and I'm not afraid to do that. I need to bite the bullet. I need to deal with it. I need to fight this disease which would kill me, okay? And you're going to feel so many different things. You probably will be a wreck for a really long time, but that's okay. Again, that's okay, and your feelings and your emotions are not going to kill you. Your eating disorder is, but your feelings in recovery and all that difficulty. And I mean, it's something that's written, isn't it, that, you know, eating disorders kill, recovery just hurts. And I think that that's something you have to carry around with you and understand that no matter how difficult things can be some days, that it's going to be okay, because it is. I promise you that. I promise you it's going to be okay. Alright guys, well, I hope that's been of some use, and I will see you all next week, and thanks for watching, and lots of love to you. Okay guys, bye.